Grab your pots and pans, it's time to cook. Don't forget the spatula. Candace Owens and Judge Joe Brown destroys Camilla. Watch this part 3.
Territory around them, and they wanted the Navy to back off. That's all on there. And the admirals, 2 months later in military times, were complaining about them being told to stand down and how disgusted they were with that. And there was money being talked about. You heard that thing about $10 million being mentioned.
For the big guy?
Yeah, but it wasn't just to the big guy. It was to Obama, Biden. And in the video from the White House tapes, there's this Chinese guy talking about he'd made $100 million deposit in the business that Hunter was involved with, and each of them got 10%. That's, I mean, it may have been AI, but what was in there, it may not have been either, and somebody needs to look at it. And by the way, to show you what they're doing with weak people and being able to get away with stuff with what they've done with the press, the President of the United States is Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. He can override any general. He can give orders to the generals. He's chief diplomat, and he can override the Secretary of State, who works for him as a cabinet officer. All right? So what that means is just like he has unlimited pardoning power. Nobody can gainsay the president when it comes to pardoning. Nobody can gainsay the president when it comes to either classifying or declassifying in whole or part any document by any means he chooses. The case.
I think that's why they fear Trump going in office, because at the end of the day, he would declassify everything. And as far as pardoning, he's been pardoning everyone. Last time I checked, he pardoned a lot of us. Do I agree with all his pardons? No, but I don't think a man should be in jail for all his life. I think people should learn their lessons, 5 to 10 years if it's not a crime dealing with kids or pedophilia or something like egregious like that. But if it's like a learned mistake, if it's like an honest mistake, or they were trying this and trying that, or they didn't know, then 5 years at the max, because I look at the rest of it is our tax dollars paying for it. So who does it really benefit at the end? And they come out as far as rehabilitation. Does it even matter? So let's solve the problem. Let's not create more.
On that is United States Department of Navy versus Egan, EGAN, 1988. If you look into the whole thing, there are multiple concurring opinions, and they say he has absolute authority to classify or declassify.
Right.
There's an old case from 1803, a very famous one called Marbury versus Madison, that says the president is under no obligation to comply with an unconstitutional act of Congress. It set the principle for the Supreme Court being able to, or a court, appellate court, under appropriate circumstances, for being able to declare an act of Congress unconstitutional. And when they came up with this thing with the archivists have authority to dictate what they're going to take into the archives, that usurps the constitutional authority of the president, which cannot be done by legislation. So that act is unconstitutional.
Facts.
And considering what we were looking at from those laptops, the downloads, it looks like there was some...
He's speaking about the Hunter Biden laptop. First, we thought it was just one laptop, so the news media said. Entirely, it was 3 laptops. What was on those laptops? A lot of things that may have been about Obama, may have been about top secrecy, may have been about them doing the thing with trying to set up parameters to monitor China. So it seems weird that they're only reporting just one. And the question would then be, if they found that powder on the floor, whose was it? Word on the street is it may have been either Hunter Biden, we all know he was a crackhead in the house. Don't mean to assault his character, but it's public records, it's public information. It's all over. It's all over online. Do your research, right? Do your research. Also, or perhaps, and this is allegedly hypothetically, what if it was Kamala? She can't answer one question to save her life. Honestly, just one question to save her life. But let's continue.
Very incriminating stuff that Trump did not want to surrender to the archivist because that would allow the culprits to get control of them and cover their tracks.
Today's economic environment is still really stressful for a lot of us, but with some claims of incest between Hunter Biden and his niece. Hunter Biden was texting with his parents, saying like about her claims or whatever it was, and the media just left this alone.
Well, that's the salacious stuff.
Yeah.
If you get into what's on the laptops in terms of he thought he was going to be a porn star.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's interesting some of the people he's having sex with on the videos that are in there. It's pretty graphic.
Mm-hmm.
Full frontal or back, whatever you want to put it.
Were there other political daughters that were in?
Yeah.
I think because I remember seeing someone that looked like someone, but I was like,
it was someone. You can see it in there. I mean, and they cleaned it up, but there are three of them. 1, 2, 3. And that black box behind the Corvette in the garage, there was some dialogue about, did your friends get a chance to look at the box? You know, this kind of thing, and big guy and all of this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So we know nothing. I mean, it's just incredible. The public, they give us 10%, and then the 90% is just being completely hidden.
But you see, there are ways of getting it. But you cannot rely on the mainstream media, because nowadays there's been a thing that has changed. They're into the ratings game because too many of them are hooked up with visual media now instead of just the print media.
Mm-hmm.
It was one thing when a place like New York or Los Angeles or Nashville or Memphis had multiple daily newspapers, and they were competing to see who sold the most and who got the most commercial revenue from people putting ads in there to win. How many newspapers you have from Nashville? 1. How many you have from Memphis? 1. How many you have for Los Angeles? 1. There's no competition. So they've expanded into being part of a communications empire where, like in Memphis, the same family that controls the commercial appeal owns all of Channel 3, half of Channel 5, and a quarter of Channel 13, and a quarter of Channel 24, and it's all incestuously controlled, so they're not competing to be most accurate in penetrating and in depth when it comes to the news. They use the opportunity.
I tell people, do your own research. That's how you combat that. Do your own research. Don't let them tell your vision what to think.
Opportunity to editorialize. Instead of there was a holdup, the police reported on such and such street in downtown Nashville, blah, 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 blah. They'll say, once again, we have an example where there needs to be gun control. That's not the event. That's editorialization. Put that on the op-ed page.
Oh, of course.
So you don't have that kind of accurate stuff, but that stuff is available because there are entities where you can get it. But there's a funny thing that's becoming apparent. Some of the best sources of information are no longer national. You can go on China's website, which is a huge thing, and you will find that they have more accurate reporting of what's going on in the United States than you'll get from an American paper.
Absolutely.
You will find, too, that some of the most interesting domestic sources have a little caveat. Say this is involved with matters of national security. Therefore, please be advised that if you enter the website, the Department of Defense may find it necessary
No way.
Yeah.
Pay you a visit.
No, not just that visit, but this kind of visit. 24 years ago, I was guest of the DEA out there in Los Angeles. They had 4 centers they took me to. One of them I found very intriguing. It was a room about size of this, I guess it would be living room you guys have downstairs, bigger than that. And from floor to ceiling, there are all these monitors, and it's people's computers. I thought that they had seized these computers. Oh no, we got basically a PEEP warrant, and we looked in on one person who is of interest. So now we are going through the computers of everyone that this person was in communications with, and they're laughing about some of
But who gave them that authority and or who gave them that software? That would be the question. And if they doing this in the White House, right, what are they doing to you and I? Hell, I'm on the computer right now. We're not hiding anything, but what they doing to you and I? Leave your thoughts down below. What you think?
the salacious stuff that's on there. And then they said, I want you to come in and watch this. I said, what are we looking at? Said, we are putting a surveillance device on this guy's automobile. We have been using some that we have to replace regularly because they are battery powered, but we're going to hook this one up with the car's electric system so we won't have to worry about it.
What?
So I'm looking at this vehicle parked in a driveway in a residence, and I said, well, where are you guys? So this camera's about 1.5 miles down the street. So, wow. So you see this van pull up, 3 guys get out, they threw down one of these lay down on roller platforms, and they scooted under it. And the guy took one of these Slim Jims and popped the door lock. They opened up the hood. They made the installation. Didn't take them more than a minute or two. And so now we got this guy so we can know what he's doing, got sound and everything else. And this was 25 years ago.
Yeah, the technology they have is absolutely incredible.
Tell you another thing, right up here in Jackson, Tennessee, been almost 40 years ago, I had a drug trial there. Went on for 3 weeks. They gave a demonstration of the technology to the jury. I said, oh, we are in trouble. They have this grain silo in Jackson on the railroad tracks. So about 3-4 miles away, there is a playground. So they're giving a live demonstration, and this kid's on the playground with a basketball. So he's standing there, and they quickly do staged in zooms. You can read it's a Voight basketball. I said, oh, this is deep. Then they went in a little bit more, and it said inflate 13 psi. I said, oh, wow, that's from 6 miles away. So they focused on the next door neighbor of my client. You couldn't see in because of the reflection of the light. They put a polarized filter on the thing so you could see in. The woman was drinking coffee, and you could read the headline on the newspaper. Then you could start reading the article on the newspaper, and this was 6 miles away. I said, oh, we're in bad trouble.
That's what they do to me. That's what they do with the satellites. Because if satellites that's around us, right? And it's a reason why when you're building stuff in the United States of America, it is a certain regulation or a certain requirement. For instance, your drywall, it has to be of a certain composition. It can't be too thick like stealth, right? It can't be that. It has to be this little micro space that's operating in between what's holding the drywall together, what's making it solid matter. It's space in between that. They can zoom in from 1,000,000 miles away, right, and zoom directly in and see everything that's going on. So if you knew this about 30, 40 years ago, what y'all think they have now? I mean, let's just think about it like this. They have something called Google Maps. And even Google Maps Live, you can see what's going on right now. Or let's just say whatever was freeze framed and they took a picture of when they uploaded the view. So would you say, is it correct to assume, is it correct to say, and I hate doing assumptions, right? But let's just make an educated guess. Is it correct to say that we all are being watched? I mean, just think about it like this. The United States to me is a police state, right? The last time I checked, I've seen a myriad of cameras. I'm talking about more cameras than I've ever seen before. From the iPhone to the camera on the computer to the camera when you driving past a stoplight to the camera when you that's on top of the buildings to the satellites to then Wi-Fi frequency bouncing and making images. Everything is under surveillance. Everything. But let's continue.
Trouble. So they did a final demonstration.
When was this?
This was in Jackson. This is like
Year-ish.
1986. So they did another thing. Myself and the prosecution, we wrote a note on a yellow pad. They said a satellite was passing overhead. It was reasonably clear day. The marshal went outside, held the pad up. We could see real time on the monitor. He had the pad held up so the satellite's 20-some thousand miles up in orbit, and we could read what we wrote on there. I said, oh.
Well, it's actually, when you say that, it's so funny that they try to present to the public that everything's always like an intelligence failure, like Trump near assassination attempt. I mean, you're telling me that you don't have the tech to protect Trump when he's at a rally? Like, we have the Secret Service and the government crawling the place, but you guys just don't have the tech.
I think everything is recorded, and if they wanted to find out, all they got to do is hit the replay button. The DJ pun the replay button. That's all they have to do, because if everything is already live, everything's recorded. They can go back in time. They can go back in time and say, oh, let's trace everyone in the last 24 hours, let's just say 72 hours, and we see who got close, who, what, when, where, how, and why. I don't think they want to do that because it might lead back to them, allegedly, hypothetically, supposedly. It might lead directly back to them. Now, if it doesn't lead to them, they wouldn't mind. If it leads to them or their partners, then why would they do that? That's why I always believe that his assassination attempt was from the inside. It definitely wasn't from the outside. That was the inside job. But let's continue.
To be able to see that someone's scaling a rooftop. I mean, because obviously the technology that they have, the government has, is like decades advanced from what they give to the people. And so when you see these situations, it's incredulous. You know, it's incredulous that they did not know. It's because they did not want to know. And it's one of these situations where I believe there's always a lackey. There's always these stories that you're told about this one crazy lone gunman. I never buy it. Didn't buy it with MLK. I don't buy it with JFK.
Two men on MLK. They were Marine snipers.
What do you think about JFK? Because that Chaos book tells us that the guy who shot the guy was MK Ultra.
Well, let me tell you this. I got an invitation after that Dundas King thing from some retired Dallas detectives, including the person that discovered the rifle in the Eyrie at the book depository. The one who said, I walked in, was talking to the building superintendent. We had to go get the elevator because you couldn't summon it. You had to physically walk up. So you had to leave the basement area where the guy's office was, walk across to the other side of the building on the first floor, then take the stairs up. So as we were walking across the first floor, here comes Lee Harvey Oswald. So I stopped him, and the building soup said, hey, he works here. So at that point, I noticed the elevator travel down to my right. You could see it come down from the top floor, and it went down to the basement. We went on and walked over and got up to the top. I just passed Lee Harvey Oswald, and when I got up there, I found the Carcano rifle. I sealed the room, and I'm the one that discovered it. Now, there's some other interesting stuff on that. We went and looked, and it was interesting in that the very limo that Kennedy and the governor were riding in was being operated along the course so everybody could see it. Now, I don't think the shot came from the grassy knoll for a very good reason. If anybody was standing along the curbside, Kennedy's head would have been hitting them about right there. You would have had to have counted on being nobody between you and your target,
Right.
which from the situation was not going to happen. But from the pictures they had 6 or 7 box cars that were on the tracks. There were 7 railroad tracks on this bridge. There was only one cop, and he was looking at the parade. The car comes in, and as it's looking from the bridge, it's on the same level as the bridge. Then it drops down and it swings over. But for the count of 7, it's going straight on, and the target is less than 100 yards away, which is point blank for a rifle. Here's the other thing. I had done a lot of ballistic experimentation. In fact, I've testified as a ballistics expert in front of juries. All right, jurors. So I said, if you've got a hole that's a clean hole in the windshield, that means the bullet came from the front. If it came from the back, like they claim, the windshield is bulged out like somebody's head hit it. So find that and go do it. And they called me up later, said, you're right. If you shoot that kind of windshield from the rear, it bulges out. If you shoot it from the front, it's a clean hole. So they got these carbon fiber rods of various calibers, 25 caliber, 30 caliber, 25 caliber, fits right through there. And it lines up with the bridge. Now, at the time this happened, there was a passageway through the bridge with openings from that passageway out facing the way the limo's coming, because it had been an old bridge that they put in the 19th century with gas lines for gas lighting. And there are these 7 boxcars, including at least one that was lined up directly with that shot. Now, here's the thing about the Carcano. There was an identifiable print on it.
Whoa.
We went over this at some great length, and they said we couldn't hook this identifiable print up until a few weeks ago, which is why we called you. So, well, what did you get? Said, we got through this Freedom of Information Act thing from the Assassinations Record and Review Bureau, where by act of Congress, reinforced by an executive order by George Herbert Walker Bush and then Clinton, all federal agencies were directed to send all records on that. So we got this, and they let me see it. Billy Saul Estes was in federal custody. He'd been sentenced for some racketeering. He had worked up a deal through his lawyers that if it checked out, they were going to.
How many shots did y'all think end up killing Kennedy, President Kennedy? How many? Because I was told it was 3 shot at the approximate same time. Was that organized confusion? And like I say, was that intel? Was that an inside job? Because how do they get away with these type of things? If you're supposed to have protection and parameters already covered weeks and months in advance. How? Let's continue. Leave your thoughts down below.
Recommend that he get immediate clemency. He gave some names, and they ran the names that they got from this discovery years after the fact, and bingo, that person's fingerprints were what was on the Carcano rifle. And there was also another location, and they were talking about how Oswald was acting when they took him into custody. So when we went into this, and then they went through and they tested to see where the bullet should have come from, they did something else. The medical examiner for the state of Texas, chief medical examiner who did the autopsy on Kennedy, also operated a chain of funeral homes. Okay, the person whose fingerprint comes back with a bingo winds up dead in a supposed one-car wreck in Desert, Texas, broad daylight.
Cover up.
They get an order to exhume his body from the graveyard. There's no body in the grave. There's an empty coffin. Okay, they're dealing with the U.S. attorney.
Can somebody put stage play Shakespearean down below? It's a great story now, wasn't it? It had me like jaw dropping, like, what? So the story that they put up, we know it's not real, right? But even what they say that could have happened was far from the truth. My God. Let's continue. Judge Joe Brown need to be protected by all costs. He knows too much.
At the time, who became a federal judge. The guy's name is Stephen Trott. I met him when I was in UCLA. And he promised them that he'd get the clemency, but the FBI came back and said negative. But they didn't know about the rest of it because he gave some names, and one of the names that he gave was the person. Now, there is a Marie Brown that I talked to. She's no relation, and she was LBJ's mistress, and she said she was at that party the night before Kennedy got killed. And he said JFK didn't have any part of it. He said, but he knew something because he said, damn, these guys have gone crazy. They're talking about taking out the president. What the hell? And she said he was very troubled. Now, she had a kid with him in 1965. I met the guy, looked just like LBJ. Same size, build, big ears, looks just like him. I also met another son he had in 1966 by a black White House secretary, looked just like him. Marie Brown introduced us. And this has been 26 years ago. So it's interesting what was going on. Now, when Trott got the report back from the FBI said there was nothing to it. The detectives accepted it at the time, but they did not realize that they had this information with the print until 30 years later, they went and ran the damn thing. So now the medical examiner is an interesting person. There had been a series of assassinations, murders for contract, and somebody who got shot 12 times survived. The house was set on fire. He was severely burned, but in spite of getting shot, he survived. He fingers the medical examiner as his attempted killer. So they take the medical examiner into custody, right? He's getting transported to a courthouse in Dallas for a preliminary hearing. He supposedly tries to escape, and they shoot him multiple times, they say. So they went to go dig this guy up, and there's no body in the grave either. And it's his graveyard. So they're going, wait a minute, what is this? This is like witness protection. In other words, the medical examiner who does the autopsy on Kennedy is supposedly killed for being a hitman. The guy that seems to have been involved with being a hitman, he doesn't have a body in the grave. What's going on? So they're taking me all around to look at all of this. So that's an untold story. And the guy whose fingerprint comes up is interesting. He was captain of the football team, ran track, was valedictorian for his high school class. He was summa cum laude at Princeton. He becomes a...
That sounds like an agent to me. That sounds like an agent to me. But let's continue. What's y'all thoughts? Who y'all think it is? And which branch? Which branch? Let's continue.
War hero. In 1949, he shoots a guy to death in front of about 30 witnesses, shoots him in the head 5 times. He's sentenced to die by hanging. 6 weeks later, the governor commutes his sentence to voluntary manslaughter, and he's the suspect in about 15 to 20 killings, but they never could put anything on him. So, I mean, what the hell?
Yeah. Yeah, what the hell is the question, and I think it's one of those things where I think that was a turning point in America when JFK got shot. I think there's been a full communist takeover. I think the world has become a stage. I think every candidate, and LBJ was in on it, obviously. I think every candidate that they've put forth really just has to be okay with the CIA's war campaign, and any person that stands outside of it. This is why they freaked out with Trump. That's how you knew he wasn't in the in club, because they just didn't expect him, and they thought that Hillary was supposed to be Hillary Clinton. She's in the in club. And now we have a circumstance where Kamala Harris is very much in the in club, and
Yeah, and she's vulnerable.
and she's vulnerable. She's in the in club. She's a vessel. She'll do whatever it is that they want. She has no opinions of her own. She's not even intelligent, if you ask me, plainly. Like
She's not.
she's not even intelligent, and so she's the worst kind of person. She's got no compassion. She lies and feels absolutely nothing, and she's the worst plausible candidate that could get into office right now when we're at such a critical juncture in this country.
Now, I've been doing what I do for a half century, and I'll say this, probably one of the most unscrupulous, low, poor character category of people you will ever find are career prosecutors. It's okay if you are a prosecutor and then you get out of it. You learn your trade. And not everyone, there are exceptions, but they tend to get so cynical that they don't give a damn anymore. And they'll cut all kinds of corners, and it's about winning the game rather than promoting justice and equity. And I say equity, not this DEI
Conflict of interest. Conflict of interest.
mess, but in terms of fundamental fairness in use of the process for a legitimate purpose. They're ruthless. Also, being involved in this in any extent is not safe. When I had this James Earl Ray case in my courtroom, 3 incidents. I had some detective friends that I used to represent way back when they were just ordinary cops, and they'd follow me around. And I remember one time they said, "Judge," said, "you have 2 cars following you." Said, "We're behind them. When you get down here," it was Union Avenue and Cooper, "said make a left turn against the no left turn sign and pull in that parking lot, in that gas station that used to be on the corner." I did, and they pulled in right behind, so we got the 2 of them blocked. Okay, next thing, "Judge, you need to take this call. It's an emergency." What the devil? So I'm on the bench. "We'll take a short 5-minute recess." "Yeah, this is Detective so-and-so. I'm out here with so-and-so." "Yeah, what's up?" Said, "Some people are trying to break in your Lexus." I said, "Okay." So keep me posted. About 10 minutes later, I'll get the call again. "Judge, they were trying to plant 2 kilos of coke in your car." Now, next thing, it's about 3:30 in the morning. I've got a murder trial going on, and I've been up doing these charges, which you have to.
So this is an honorable judge, right? This is how you know this system is trash. This is an honorable judge. He been working for the states for years, right? And you telling me that they tried to plant something illegal just because he was either too smart for his own good or he was solving the things that they didn't want him to solve. So they put a tail on him first. You know, that's inside information. That's an inside job right there. They put a tail on you. You make a left turn in a parking lot that you're not supposed to make a left turn in. Caught him. Then he's on trial, and then they tried to put illegal substances in his car. Who did he upset? That would then be the question.
Read for 5 or 6 hours on a murder case. A lot of work.
Easy to me.
So I'm home, sitting in my kitchen. I drank a beer. I hadn't even taken my suit coat off. And something woke me up, and I saw two people out front from where I was sitting in the kitchen, and I could see into the den area on the other side. There were three people out back. They took an interesting device with a large suction cup after they pried the screens out, put it on the plate glass, and ran the arm around with a glass cutter and lifted the center out. So I'm fascinating watching this. I was armed, so let's just say they tried to enter and things got very exciting for the next few. And the next morning, a friend of mine who was the director of police, Winfrey, and another detective that I had represented, they showed up about sunset. And we discovered that for a half hour before this, the dispatcher's tape had been cut off, so they weren't recording. And for 45 minutes afterwards, they weren't. Things got real exciting that night, but it's like I'm just a judge, and I'm looking into it objectively instead of trying to, James Earl Ray, we're going to really do him in. Now, there's a caveat to what happens to James Earl Ray.
What's that?
There was a woman who contacted me along with some other people. She'd come up with an algorithm that relies on the fact that when humans are talking like you and I, only 15% of what you say consists of the words, 35% consists of the tone, and the other 50% is the body language.
Yep.
If they had a clear video.
That's what I was told. That's what I was told too. Don't pay attention to what people say. Just pay attention to their body language. It says all that you need to know. They hiding something, they're confining something, they at ease, they're relaxed, they're tight. Body language speaks a million words.
Recording of somebody talking, they'd run it through the algorithms, and they were seeing what bin Laden was really saying and what he meant, or Putin, or whatever it may be. And they would break it down into an animation for the body language and also analyze the tone. So these officers were concerned with Gitmo, and they wanted to make sure they were adhering to their oaths to uphold the Constitution. And they wanted to use this device to evaluate some of the things that they had heard and also to calibrate it. So they got 6 hours of the last taped interview of James Earl Ray that some people in Nashville had done. And they thought they were going to get a real live liar. So in 6 hours worth of tape, they conveyed to me that they were astonished when he was all the way over in the green telling the truth, except for two questions, which essentially were versions of, if you didn't do it, do you have any idea who did? And he said, I really don't know. And it was showing neutral or perhaps equivocation. So they said when they were astonished that he was telling the truth, they wanted to come to me because they knew what I was doing on this case. And if the case had gone past James Earl Ray not dying and his lawyer dying in the same week, Memphis, Tennessee lawyer, and Dr. Pepper, who was involved with a lot of these assassination things, was the foreign lawyer who was involved in this case too, I would have issued a finding that Ray didn't shoot King. Ray wasn't even in town. In the Memphis Police Department's homicide squad, I found had been for years telling the prosecutors, this isn't the man. You got the wrong guy. He wasn't even in Memphis. And it was not one man shot him from the flop house or the bushes under the flop house window. It was two people from the fire station dormitory, the cafeteria, which was directly across the street. They recruited them from the Marine Sniper School in Quantico, Virginia, which is right across the tarmac from the FBI Training Academy.
Inside.
So they supplied an XM-21. They got 5 of them. and 5,000 rounds of ammo, and they didn't even have a hostage rescue unit at those times, and the Defense Department wanted them back because they only made 63 barrels and 62 rifles, and they wanted them for the NOM for experimental purposes. So we get into that, and now if you go to the Civil Rights Museum down in Memphis and you look at the exhibit, it says, we once thought that the shot came from the flophouse window, but that's impossible because it wouldn't open up far enough for a rifle to be used. And it didn't come from the bushes. It seems to have come from elsewhere. So after I retired, I had resources, so I started putting them to use, and we got a lot of information that backed that up. And by the way, I'll say this, Jesse Jackson is not the culprit that was collaborating with trying to get King done in. It was somebody else. But when you get into the ins and outs, there's a lot more to the story than the press ever let out.
Well, first and foremost, I would say I think you're lucky to be alive if you were presenting a narrative that was separate
You ever
from the
seen
feds.
John Wick?
Yeah.
Well, my old man taught me how to shoot when I was 6 years old. So I had a lot of money to get a lot of practice ammunition. So
when people hear this, right, we're having this discussion and we're really talking about government corruption from the very beginning. I mean, we're talking about potentially a breeding program for world leaders. We are talking about Kamala's entire career really being the product of corruption, whether it's, George Soros wanting to cash out on that company, her affair with Willie Brown, what she's obviously doing now, which is she didn't even really run for president. She just kind of has been just became the candidate overnight. We're talking about the murder of MLK Jr., the murder and the assassination of JFK Jr., the feds being behind all of these things. How are people that are watching this supposed to feel anything but completely exasperated with the state of politics in America? Like there is almost, it feels like no hope because we have a complicit media that's working to cover all of these things, gaslighting the American people, trying to squeeze us more on our freedoms, making our kids stupid, right? I mean, like literally, we're going to the future, it's going to be idiocracy in this country because the kids don't even know basic history. People actually believe that everything the media tells them is real. These kids can't even tell you the differences between genders anymore. There's 28 of them.
126.
Where do you derive, is there 126 now officially? Where do you derive, if you do, any sense of hope in this situation?
Well, it's
126 different genders. That's a bit extreme. My God, 126. These people are tasting the rainbow. They eating these damn rainbows, eating the Skittles. That's crazy to me. That is crazy. 100 and leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think about this one. This is giving me a little headache.
See, the problem is nobody has opposed any of this because the adversity is between being fair to black folk and being old-time racist. That was the paradigm. But that's not what the case is right now. But the public is being conditioned to we have to be fair to everybody. And it gets a bit ludicrous. Well, he can't help himself. That's what he's compelled. That's his orientation. Well, okay. But I tried a lot of cases.
Leave your thoughts down below, right? I really want to know what you thought about this one, from the MLK to the JFK to the Kamala to the them stating that whoever got caught in these murders or these assassinations, right? These assassination attempt got buried, but they did. Smash that like button, tell a friend and tell a friend. This is the beginning. This is not the end. Another episode of the Healthy Discussion Show. And remember, positivity over negativity always. Click those links down below. If you're feeling generous, you can hit my Cash App or you can hit my PayPal. Thanks for sending me this email to react to this video. I appreciate my audience as well. Also, we have some EMF protected. If you love your loved ones, get them some cancer protection, especially for radio frequency and or any type of harmful frequency that's coming your way, from the phones to the Wi-Fi to the computer that you're sitting in front of on the daily, right? Also, if you need some business funding, click the link down below as well. All my links are discounted rates. All my links are discounted rates. If you're wondering about your credit and you need your credit monitored, also click the Identity IQ link right there down below as well. I appreciate you guys. And remember, positivity over negativity.